Welcome to this Wisel Excel VBA tutorial. In this part of our series on writing SQL for Excel files, we're going to look at how to insert data into an existing worksheet. So the video is all about writing the insert into statement in SQL. We're going to start by looking at how to insert a single row by typing in the values, and then look at how you can populate specific columns in the target worksheet. We'll look at how you can select data from a separate worksheet, and then how to combine multiple select statements using a union query. We'll also show how you can check for existing data or duplicates using joins, and then at the end of the video we'll look at how to select data from a separate Excel file and insert that into the one we've connected to. So let's get started. The setup for this video is a little different to previous parts of the series. We still have our macro-enabled workbook with a button which allows us to run some code, but this time, rather than selecting data into this workbook, we're going to be writing information into a separate file called movies. We'll be adding our data to the end of this list of films on the film sheet, and the data we'll insert in there will come from a variety of sources. We'll start just by typing in some literal values, then we'll look at how to select data from a separate worksheet in the same file, and finally we'll look at selecting data from a worksheet in a different file altogether. I have all these files stored in the same folder, and I'll drop a link in the video description so that you can download these and follow along with me writing the code if you'd like to. Some of the code we're going to write is going to rely on previous techniques we've covered in this playlist. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about these topics in this video, but if you're interested, you're going to need to know how to use union queries and how to write joins as well. So if you need a quick refresher on how those work, we have a bunch of videos which cover those. We're also going to rely on Microsoft ActiveX Data Objects, which is covered in a separate playlist altogether. So if you're interested in the basics of how that works, then this playlist is the place to start. The code that I've already written is also a little different to previous videos in the series, although the basic process is still the same. If we clicked the execute command button, it will trigger a subroutine called create SQL command. Obviously I haven't gotten very far with that yet, but we'll improve on that command shortly. And then once we've constructed the command, it gets passed into a separate subroutine called execute SQL command. So in this subroutine, we're creating a connection to the movies workbook. And once we've done that, we create a command object. So this is different to the previous videos in the playlist where we've created a record set object and then extracted the results of the record set into this workbook. Here we're just setting the command text property using the command that we've written and then executing that command on the file that we've connected to. And that's basically it. So we're not going to see any results in this workbook at all. The macro-enabled workbook really is just a repository for the code that we'll execute. For the first example, I'd like to insert a single row to the end of the film sheet in the movies workbook. Now the code will work quite happily whether the movies workbook is open or closed. I'm going to keep the file open just to make it easier to demonstrate that things are working, but you're welcome to close the file down if you'd like to. What is important is that the film worksheet already exists, and that we provide a value to each of the columns in that table, at least for the first example we'll create. So the film whose details I'm going to insert is one that I've seen fairly recently. It's a Disney Pixar one called Luca, and I picked this one because it's got a nice short title, so I'm going to have to type this into my code. So I've got all the details there ready in Wikipedia. It's a fairly sweet film. It's pretty typical Disney Pixar fare. I'd recommend it. It's not quite as good as Raya and the Last Dragon, but that's got a much longer title that I didn't want to have to type in. So let's stick with Luca for now. So back in the Visual Basic Editor, we're going to set our SQL command text to be equal to an insert into statement. And then we need to write in the name of the table that we're inserting that data into. So because the film sheet is a worksheet, it needs the name of the worksheet and the $sign after that. And then I'm just going to break this across a couple of lines using a continuation character. We need to provide the values that will be entered into each column. So we enter the word values, and then in some round brackets, we write out a comma-separated list of the values we'll insert. So any text, as you may well be aware from previous videos in the series, text needs to go inside some single quotes. For dates, we need to wrap those up inside hash marks or pound symbols if you prefer. And we have a variety of formats we can write our dates in, as you'll be aware if you've watched the video on working with dates in this playlist. I'm going to write out 18 June 2021. Then a comma. Numbers don't need any delimiter characters at all, so the runtime in minutes value 95. Then another comma. I'll abbreviate the studio name to Disney rather than Walt Disney Pictures or Disney Pixar. And then finally the box office takings, which was $21 million. I think that's all correct according to Wikipedia at least. Okay, so having done all that, we can simply execute this create SQL command subroutine. You're welcome to run this just directly from the Visual Basic Editor by clicking the Run Sub button, or head back to the menu sheet and click the Execute Command button in the worksheet. And once you've done that, if you head back to the Movies workbook on the film sheet, you should see that the row for Luca has suddenly appeared at the bottom of that list with all the details we've entered. Just before we start inserting more data into this table, I want to talk briefly about how we can remove data from it. Now, there is an SQL statement called delete, which, as the name suggests, allows you to delete rows from a table. And I've covered this in previous videos for Excel VBA to show how to delete information from Access databases and to delete information from SQL Server databases as well. Just to show you what the delete statement would look like, I'm going to head back to the Visual Basic Editor, and I'm just going to quickly copy and paste the first two lines there, SQL command equals, and then the insert into statement. I'm going to paste that in just down below, and then I'm going to change insert into to say delete from. And then I'll need to add a where clause to the end of this, so I'm going to say where title equals Luca, just to try to delete that one single row. I'll get rid of the continuation characters there and then just comment out my original SQL command. So that's a fairly basic delete from statement, which would work if we were connecting to Access or SQL Server. However, if I try to run this one while we're connected to an Excel workbook, we'll find that it won't work. The delete statement sadly isn't supported to delete rows from an Excel worksheet. So basically, if you want to get rid of the rows we've inserted, you're going to have to do this manually. And it's quite important to do this in the correct way. If I just click OK on that error message and then head back to the Movies workbook, it isn't quite sufficient just to highlight a row of cells and press the delete key just to clear the content of those cells. So if I did clear contents, which is the equivalent of the delete key, the next time I insert a new row into this table, so I'll head back to my Visual Basic Editor, I'll get rid of that SQL command that I just created, and then uncomment the one that I used earlier on to insert Luca. When I run that subroutine again, I can head back to the Movies workbook and find that Luca has been added to the row below the one that I think I've just deleted. So when you clear the contents of the cells, the physical row that the data belonged to still exists. Again, if I highlight that row and then just press the delete key or clear contents, head back to the Visual Basic Editor again and then run the subroutine, it will once again skip that blank row. So to make sure that all these are completely removed, you can select the cells and then either delete them using the delete options, and there are various keyboard shortcuts you can use to delete cells, or you can clear all. Either will work. So once I've done that, if I head back to the Visual Basic Editor again and run that same subroutine, this time when I go back to the Movies workbook, Luca has been added to the next available blank row. Next, I'd like to insert the same film, but this time I don't want to populate every single column of the table. I want to omit the runtime column. So to get that to work, I'm going to start by deleting the Luca row entirely first of all, and then I can head back to the Visual Basic Editor. If I just try to simply take away the runtime and the comma associated with it, this isn't going to work. If I try to run that subroutine, I'll get a message warning me that the number of columns doesn't match. If I wanted this to work, what I'd have to do is specify after the name of the table the list of column names that I want these values to populate. So after the table name, in some round brackets, I can refer to the field names. So title, first of all, followed by a comma, and then release date, and then another comma and studio, and then one more comma and box office. Okay, so having done that, I can run that subroutine again, and this time if I head back to Movies, the film has been inserted but with no value for the runtime column. Rather than typing in the values we want to insert, we can also select those values from a separate table. So for the next example, we're going to use the Film Years worksheet and select the table called Films 2017. So this is a named range in this workbook, so I'm going to reference it using its named range rather than a worksheet name. I'm going to select the title, release date, distributor and worldwide gross columns, so there's some slightly different names in these tables compared to the main film table. But the principle is just using a select statement to return the results. So let's head back to the Visual Basic Editor, and then rather than saying values and writing in that list of values, we can replace that with a select statement. So I'm going to add the select keyword to one line, and then add a continuation character, and then on the next line say from, and then write in the name of that table. So I'm going to say Films 2017. Okay. I'm also going to give this an alias just to make it easier to distinguish which columns we're selecting. So I'm going to call this table as new, as in new data, new records. And then I need to write out the list of column names that I'd like to select. I know they're slightly different, but just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to copy and paste the existing list of columns from the Insert Into line. And then we can just add just the ones we need to. So Studio becomes Distributor, and Box Office becomes Worldwide Gross. Okay, so having done that, if we also then make sure we've used our alias to reference these columns, I'm going to say new dot in front of each of these column names. This isn't strictly speaking necessary, but it will help us a little later on in the video to identify which columns we're talking about. If we then execute that subroutine, we should find, if we go back to the movies workbook, we've inserted all of the rows from the Films 2017 worksheet into the bottom of that list. Now the select statement that we've just used there is a fairly basic one. It just selects all the rows from the range or the worksheet that we've referenced. But what if we wanted to select only the Disney films, say, from that other worksheet? Let's just start by deleting the rows we've just inserted there. And then we can head back to the Visual Basic Editor. And there's no reason you couldn't add a where clause to the end of this select statement. So let's add another new line to the end and say where. And then I want to refer to new.distributor equals, and then look for the text Disney. Okay, so having done that, we can run that subroutine again. And this time if we head back to movies, we'll see that we've only added the Disney films to the list. I'd quite like to go back to selecting all the films from the list though. I want to make sure that we build up a complete list of all of the films from all of the other worksheets and range names. So I'm going to delete those ones that we've just added in there and then head back to the Visual Basic Editor and just get rid of that where clause that we've just added. Next, I'd like to use the same insert into statement to insert all the data from the Films 2017 range and all the data from the Films 2018 range as well. Now, in order to get that to work, we can't simply tag on another select statement to the end of this current query. What we're going to do is select all of these columns from a subquery that will union together the Films 2017 and the Films 2018 range. So this is where you need to remember a little bit about how union queries work and also subqueries as well. So at the end of this line, which is selecting these new columns, I'm going to add a from clause and then open a set of round brackets. Then on the next line, I'm just going to indent that one space first of all, and I'm going to say select, and then I'm going to refer to these same column names. I'm going to do this without the aliases this time. So I'm just going to quickly copy and paste title, release date, distributor and worldwide gross. And then I'm just going to take away the new dot aliases in front of each column name. And then at the end of the Films 2017 table name, I'm going to add another continuation character. And then on the next line, open some double quotes, close the round brackets, and then alias that subquery as new. Now that was quite a lot of effort, and I've clearly made a mistake there as well. Somewhere I've missed a double quote character. There she is. So this is quite a lot of effort to not change the results in any way whatsoever. If I were to execute that command, it will simply insert all of the data from the Films 2017 sheet. So just to demonstrate that, the Movies Workbook film sheet currently ends with Luca on row 25. If we run that subroutine again, it will just insert everything from the Films 2017 range. The advantage I have now is that inside this set of round brackets that I've just created, I can union as many additional queries as I like. So what I'm going to do is just copy that select line, the one that selects everything from the Films 2017 sheet, or range I should say. Paste that in on the next line. I need to add the word union as a minimum, and in this case I'm going to use union all. If you're not sure what the difference is, then that's what the other videos on the union queries are all about. And then I'm just going to change the table name we're going to use there, so Films 2018. So having done that, basically this produces a continuous list of all of the films from those two ranges in that subquery, referred to as new, and then selected into that new table, or sorry, that existing table. So if I were to make sure I clear the contents of the data I've just added, let's get rid of those rows, and then head back to the Visual Basic Editor and run that query again, or that command I should say. I've now inserted everything from 2017 and from 2018 in the same insert statement. Now the reason I've been making sure to delete the rows we've inserted each time is because, of course, if we simply run the same statement again, it's going to add another copy of all this data. Let's just do that. If we run that subroutine one more time, head back to the movie sheet, we've now got 2 copies of the data from the 2017 and 2018 sheets. One way to solve this problem is to check whether the titles of the films already exist in the film worksheet, and then make sure we only insert the unique new titles. This is where we're going to need to rely on some joins. So let's start by deleting all of those rows, everything below Luca I'm going to get rid of, and then we're going to join the existing new table, the one that we've just created in this union query, in this subquery. We're going to join that to the original film worksheet. So I'm going to say as new, and then I'm going to use a left join or a left outer join to the film sheet, and I'm going to alias the film sheet as old. So the film sheet represents all the existing data, the union query, the subquery represents all the new data. I want to join these two tables on the condition that the titles are the same. So just to make this easier to read, I'm going to put this on a separate line, so I'll have a new continuation character. Then I'm going to use the on keyword to say on new.title equals old.title. What I'm then going to do is only insert rows where the old title doesn't exist. So again, you'll have to remember back to the videos on joins. Using a left join returns all of the rows from the table on the left hand side of that word. So we're going to return all of the rows from the combination of Films 2017 and Films 2018. We're going to try to find a match for those film titles between the new and the old worksheets. And I only want to return a list of titles which are unique to the new list. So to do that, we can add a where clause, and we can say where old.title is null. So this is the technique we covered in a previous video, finding unmatched records. Now, if I were to run that subroutine, I should find, when I head back to the movie sheet, that I have indeed inserted a set of 2017 and 2018 rows. But if I head back to the Visual Basic Editor and run that one as many times as I want to, it really won't matter at this point. If I head back to the movie sheet, I'm still left with only the rows that I originally inserted. Now there is one small little issue with this. The 2017 and 2018 worksheets both contain 10 rows. If I highlight the list of 2018 sheets, that's definitely 10. Oh, sorry, 2018 films, that's definitely 10. But if I highlight the list of 2017 films, that's only 9. And the reason for that is that there is a film in the 2017 sheet which has the same title as a film which already exists. This is Disney's fault for remaking all their films again. So the Beauty and the Beast remake in 2017, because that film title already exists, it is no longer inserted when we take all the data from the 2017 sheet. So we can make our join a little more specific by joining on multiple columns. If we head back to the Visual Basic editor, I want to check that the combination of title and release date is unique. So in the on clause, we can add an and operator and check that new dot release date is equal to old dot release date. And having done that, if we run the subroutine again, we should find that we've now added a new film to the bottom of the list, the new remake of Beauty and the Beast, but without duplicating all of the other 2017 and 2018 films. Next, I'd like to include some data from separate workbooks. So I've just opened up the two files called Movies 2019 and Movies 2020 from the same folder that all these existing files belong to. And each of these workbooks contains another list of films from that particular year. We've got a worksheet name, Films 2019, and a named range as well, also called Films 2019. This worksheet contains a couple of duplicated film titles, like The Lion King and Aladdin have both been remade and already exist in our list of films. And then in a similar way, we've got the data from Movies 2020, so a named worksheet, Films 2020, and a named range as well, Films 2020. I'm just going to close down the Movies 2020 workbook and Movies 2019 workbooks. It's not necessary to have those open. And then back in the Visual Basic editor to include those in the subquery that populates our new data table, we're just going to start by copying and pasting the Union All Select line. So I'm going to copy that and then just paste it in on the next line. Obviously next we need to update the table names, and we have a couple of choices here, so we can go for Films 2019 to refer to the named range, or Films 2019 $ to refer to the worksheet name. Either will work, it's entirely up to you. But of course that's not going to work if I try to execute that statement, because the Films 2019 worksheet or 2019 table doesn't exist in the same workbook that we're connecting to. So our connection string points explicitly to the Movies workbook. If we want to refer to an external file, then we need to add another line of code to say which workbook this worksheet or range is in. So on the next line, I'm going to open up some more double quotes, and then I'm going to close those quotes and concatenate the continuation character before we fill in the details here. So the first word we'll type in is the word in. And then in some single quotes, I want to write out the full path to the worksheet or workbook that contains the table Films 2019. I actually don't want to write out the complete path to that workbook because it's quite a long path. So instead, we're going to cheat a little bit and do what we've done to construct the connection string to the Movies workbook. We've referred to the path of this workbook and concatenated it to a specific file name. So I'm just going to copy and paste this part here, this workbook.path and \movies.xlsx. And then I'm going to paste that in after an ampersand on the same line as the in keyword. Now the name of the workbook was Movies 2019, so let's just change the workbook name there. And then after the XLSX, I'm going to close the single quotes. So that's the single quote that's open there, so that gives us the full path to the workbook. Then after that, I need to specify some extra properties. So I'm going to head down to the connection string that we've already created. And one of the properties we can specify here is the version of Excel we're connecting to, also whether or not it has a header row, etc. So I'm just going to copy and paste the file type here. I'm going to copy Excel 12.0 XML and the semicolon character, and then paste that in just after the Movies workbook name. After the semicolon character, I'm going to close the single quotes and then close the double quotes to wrap up that entire string, and then that will select all the data from that worksheet in that workbook. Let's just give that a quick try. If we run the subroutine at this point, head back to the Movies workbook, we should now have, as well as a list of all the 9 unique films from 2017 and all the 10 films from 2018, the 1 additional unique film from 2017, Beauty and the Beast, and then the 10 films from 2019, all in the same list. So at this point, adding in the data for films or movies 2020 is remarkably simple. Back in the Visual Basic Editor, we can just copy and paste the 2 lines we've just created here. We can then stick those in, still within the same subquery, so still within this set of round brackets which is constructing the unioned list. Update the file name to Movies 2020, and of course update either the range name or the worksheet name to Films 2020. Just to prove that it will work for all of the data, let's just delete everything that we've added apart from Luca since the beginning of the video. I'm going to highlight all those rows and delete them all. And then if we run the subroutine again, we should see we've inserted all of the data from 2017, 2018, 2019 and 2020, so 40 rows altogether. But if we attempted to run that subroutine again, then absolutely nothing should happen because all of those rows already exist in the film table, so they're all now old films. So there we go, there's some basic techniques you can use to insert data into an existing worksheet in a different workbook. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how to select data and create a brand new worksheet at the same time. So I hope you're looking forward to that one. Thanks as ever for watching. We'll see you next time.